You're live.
Hey, everybody. It's Jonathan Harmon with the J Harmon Home Team, powered by Keller Williams, here for Table Talk, where there is always room at the table. And we're going to talk about all kinds of fun stuff today. I do have to do a little bit of business. Trent told me that I should have prepared you for this, but I didn't. So you're just going to have to be okay. The Table Talk is underwritten by Mr. Bryan Nale over at IBERIABANK Mortgage. And Brian's a good dude. You've met Brian.
I have. Great guy.
Good lender, good guy. We're going to talk to another lender today who's also a good lender and a good guy. But Brian actually writes the check for this one. So you got to step your game up, big guy.
I need to.
Calling you out.
Yeah.
Subtle call.
So there was nothing subtle about that.
That was the most unsubtle call.
Yeah, I am the king of awkward. This is Mr. Jonathan Harmon. So anyway, so I got my friend Austen Barnard here with First Community Mortgage. And Austen and I met, I guess, last year. It's only been a year, but
I think it's only been a year. Probably less than a year. Honestly.
Yeah, I think you're right. We had a beer over at Deep South.
We did.
Remember that?
Yeah. It's the first time actually meeting in person.
Yeah. So it's been less than a year. Anyway, it feels like a lot longer than that. I don't know if that's good or bad.
It's like good.
Yeah. I want to say we go way back, but anyway, you're relatively new to the lending world. But you are doing a great job. He's smart, energetic, and thoughtful, which are three things that I always want in a lender. So how did you get from where you were to where you are? Like, and how's it going so far, I guess? How about that?
Sure. Well, I appreciate, first of all, the compliments in the beginning. And as far as where I came from to where I am now, it's kind of a pretty open-ended question. I can go really deep, really far back. But I'm not going to, because I could talk the entire time. So
I got you.
I'll kind of stick to a little bit back in the past, right? So played with the Titans for about a year and a half.
That's the Titans helmet. This helmet has been on the Titans field.
It has.
This exact one
on my head, and Pittsburgh and Green Bay.
Yeah,
all the cool places.
He said he had a big head, and then I went and put it on, and I couldn't. I was like trying to hammer it down. So
I thought I had a big head.
He says it's an XL. I guess I need an XL and a half. But
yeah, maybe so. But yeah, so I played with the Titans for about a year and a half, and kind of two things with that. I would say never really expected to make it in the NFL. To be honest with you, always knew I was talented and had some skill. And the hard work to do it. I just didn't know that I actually had that amount of talent.
Way to sell yourself short there, buddy.
I mean, I pushed for it. I wasn't putting all my eggs in one basket. Let's put it that way. Right. So, luckily had that opportunity, and kind of with that, right, is obviously a huge payday. I'm a very open person. You can look this up on Google, so it's not like anything I'm hiding, but basically came out of college, made about $360,000 first year out of college. And I was like, man, this is really nice.
Yeah.
Like really, really nice. So when I ended up getting released from the Titans, and
you were like,
training,
man, that was really nice.
Yeah. I was like, I need to make more money. To put it in perspective, I would go from doing that to working for my dad. He was in construction. He's a builder. And I believe I was making like $16 an hour.
That's a big difference.
I was like, wow, this is kind of shocking.
And you weren't playing football.
I was not playing football. I was just training and then working for my dad.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say from that aspect, I was like, man, I need to get in a position to where I can get back to that point in a fairly quick manner, being able to work as hard as I did to get in the NFL. Right. And in that role, going corporate's not really the way to go. I definitely did not want to do construction. I hated digging holes. I hated doing all the, what I'm going to call grunt work. It just wasn't for me.
Sure.
So through some deeper conversations with like our executive team at First Community Mortgage, I kind of just gave it a shot. I felt like finance was like my mindset. I had the drive and hard work to actually make things happen.
Is that what your degree's in?
Yeah. So I was an engineering undergrad, and then I got my master's in finance.
Okay.
So
engineering and then finance. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Smart.
It's a little strange.
So like all the nerdy stuff.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
All the numbers. Yeah.
Yeah. All the number nerd.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. But I was not an engineering guy. Had some internships in that, and it did not click.
Yeah.
I can't sit behind a desk 24/7.
Yeah.
It's just not for me. I like people too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just kind of dove in, didn't know what the mortgage business was like. Started August of last year. Is that right? Yeah. August of last year. So I've been in it for about a year and a half now.
August of 2 years ago.
No, last year, 2020.
It's 2022, buddy.
That's right. That's right. I forgot today's the
math.
I keep forgetting we had the new year. That's right. Okay. So 2 years ago, in August, so I've been in it for about a year and a half, and really just kind of dove in full throttle. My wife is a stay-at-home dog mom.
Okay.
So that is something where I needed to be able to take care of my family and let her kind of do what she wanted. She does like side jobs and helps out a bunch of different families. But I didn't want to force her to have to work is kind of the biggest thing, right? Like I wanted to work to take care of my family. And luckily this year has been phenomenal. I've made some really great relationships with some really great people and have been blessed. And I believe I had a pretty record-breaking year for our company. So
that's awesome. Well, you know, I have found that when you just treat people right, you know, the rest kind of takes care of itself.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you got to work hard and you've got to go out and pound pavement and all that kind of stuff. And you got to make relationships. I've never found that to be work though. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's more like positioning. It's more like placing your product placement.
Sure.
Right. So I'll tell people this is what I do for a living. I'm not a secret agent. You know, I tell people or I put myself in places where I can have conversations about real estate with folks and maybe not even tell them what I do, but just have a conversation. And they're like, oh, how do you know all of this stuff? And I'll be like, well, glad you asked, you know, that kind of thing. And I think you do the same thing. I think you do a good job of that, where you just kind of put yourself in a place and the next thing you know, you're having a conversation about business, but it feels natural. It doesn't feel like you're selling someone.
Yeah. Which I'm not a good salesman in the first place, in my opinion. I could not sell ice to an igloo or ice to an Eskimo, I think is the term.
Right.
That's just not me. But I would agree with you. I think the relationship part of it is not work, and I don't consider that work. The biggest part of work I would say that I do is obviously the loan side of things, like the financial numbers. But then just being kind of strategic about my relationships. I think that's work.
Yeah.
Right. So continuing to provide value and continuing to build my book of business and continuing to build my relationships is the biggest thing.
Well, and I think the biggest work on the lending side and certainly on the real estate side is really making yourself keep up with what's really going on.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, it's easy for people to look back and go, man, house prices have gone up. This market's booming. Well, that is not a clear picture. Not even close to a clear picture. Or like in your case, I wanted you to talk a little bit about the conforming loan limits going up. You know, okay, that's cool. So I can buy a more expensive house on a, you know, conventional, traditional mortgage. But that's not really a clear picture either.
Sure.
So tell us about those loan limits real quick.
Yeah. So I think the best thing to do is to kind of start this right. So in October of this past year, the Fannie Mae came out saying that the new conforming loan limit was actually going to be 625.
And it had been
586, 250. So it went up about $50,000. And we were all like, from a lending perspective, we're like, oh my God, this is amazing, right? Because jumbo loans get really convoluted, more extensive underwriting, larger down payment, like everything with that, right? So this is a great day for us. So October, we started rolling out the 625 loan limit and conforming. And then December, actually, I believe it was December, maybe the end of November, they came back out and said it's actually going up to 647,200. So the new conforming loan limit for 2022 is $647,200. And what that really means is that a typical buyer, so if you've ever owned a home before, you only have to put a 5% down payment down up to that amount, right? So you can buy a house for $670,000. As long as your loan amount is below $647,200, you're in that conforming loan limit range. I personally, while I am going to do what's best, like overall for my client, I always try to encourage them to try and stay in the conforming loan limit if they can. I believe I closed 5, maybe 6 jumbos last year out of the 86 or 87 closings I had, and 4 of the 6, it was a process.
Oh yeah.
And it's not, I mean, it was a learning curve for me, especially on the first couple. But even for the client, I just felt like when you're in that stature of buying a home and you're able to get a jumbo loan, there's like a persona of, you know, hey, I make X number of dollars. Hey, I have X, Y number of dollars in my bank account. Like, why can't you just give me the money? And they don't want to provide a whole lot. But then jumbo is requesting even more.
Sure.
So it just gets convoluted. It kind of makes.
Well, and the reason for that, if you're watching, is that's protection for the bank. I mean, 100%. You know, you get to a certain point, and this is kind of the rest of that story is that they had to increase those loan limits because of the appreciation that we've experienced in our market.
Yeah.
So, and this is going to sound bizarre to a lot of folks that might be listening. A $500,000 house in Rutherford County anymore is common.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not an unusual, abnormal home.
Yeah.
Where, even 4 years ago, 5 years ago, definitely 6 years ago, $500,000 would get you a freaking nice house. And it's still a nice house, but it's not what it was 5 years ago.
Not at all. I mean, I would even say if you're trying to go to like the Nashville, Davidson area,
forget it.
I mean, $500,000 is going to get you a maybe 2,000 square foot home on a little
postage stamp. Yeah. And so is it good? Is it bad? I don't know that I don't know that I can qualify it as either one. It just is,
I would say it's good personally.
And unless you're a first time buyer or second, first move up, you know what I mean?
I think my opinion is that conforming loan limit increasing.
The increase is good. Yes.
The increase is good. The first time buyer is typically not going to be in that realm anyway.
Correct.
I think the market as a whole is what's hurting first time buyers.
Yes.
Not necessarily the conforming loan limit or anything with that aspect of things.
We're saying the same thing. I didn't qualify what I was saying, but yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah. For a first time buyer, this market's brutal. It's hard. I
could not imagine trying to buy a house right now.
It's hard. But in order to get that conventional loan, I think that's what I'm saying. They had to raise that limit. They had to.
Yes.
And then when they raised it to a certain point, and then they were like, oh, that really didn't help as much as we thought it would, or it's not going to help as much as we thought it would. And so they raised it again. I would venture to say that it would probably stand to be raised again, especially if we have another year in 2022 like we did in 21.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think they're always adjusting and taking into consideration the appreciation that we're getting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you would know this better than I would, but I think we were at 1 to 1.5% appreciation every month last year.
Higher is what we averaged. So Rutherford County was hitting 30. We hit, I looked at just the ones that I remember, August to August, September to September, October to October. And each of those 12-month kind of rolling spans was 31% appreciation in Rutherford County. And that's in an aggregate. So that is the entire county, right? There are some that are slower than that, which means there are some submarkets that outpace that. I mean, that's nuts, man.
That's insane.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
And so one of my favorites, and we'll get to this in a second, why should somebody buy right now? And I think this is ultimately what that conforming loan comes to, is it all comes down to affordability. So correct me if I'm wrong, but in a jumbo situation, you may or may not get the same terms. Like you have to negotiate the terms kind of each time. Is that correct?
Yes and no. So I'm going to say you're somewhat right in the fact that the terms do change, right? So jumbo loans are obviously owned by investors as opposed to just Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, things like that. So Fannie Mae basically tells us what the guidelines are, like what they're looking for. I'm going to say in a very easy term, right? Like we're following a checklist. As long as these
fits in a box,
you're good to go. Yeah, pretty much. That's what it is, right? Jumbo, every investor is going to be a little different,
right?
And that was my thing with, especially this past year, the couple that I did close. And again, I'll be honest with you, like a couple of them were bumpy. Like I don't know that we provided the best service we could because of the jumbo product. And when I say that, like the investor, we would get everything we needed. The investor would be like, no, we need this too. No, we need this too.
Because ultimately the Fannie and Freddie guidelines are set so that it protects the bank that originates that loan, and then or whoever purchases the loan after the bank originates it.
Correct.
And so
it standardizes it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Fannie and Freddie provide a little bit of protection as well. So they kind of like not really insure, but kind of insure the health and safety of whoever holds that note. Yep. In a jumbo, it's private. So what makes me feel safe might not be what makes you feel safe in that loaning environment.
Yeah. I mean, we could follow all the instructions from an investor's guidelines, close the loan, and then 2-3 weeks later, they're like, oh, you don't have this one thing. We're not buying it from you anymore. And then it's on our portfolio.
Yeah.
And we have to keep it regardless. So there's risk involved with that. And that's why, again, I think there's just, if you can fit yourself into that, what I'm going to call conforming box, I would do it.
Yeah. Well, and so that's kind of where I'm going with this, is that as prices increase 31%, or let's say that it's only 25%, only 25%, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh. Which would be $2 and some change a month.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's a lot. When our normal appreciation, like a quote flat normal market, is 3 to 4% for a year.
Okay.
Not a month.
Yeah.
So when that happens, prices are going up. Your best bet to maintain affordability is low interest rates, which is kind of the driver of that, right?
Sure.
Interest rates stay low, prices go up.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So when you start having prices going up and you take a hit on not quite as good of terms, that affordability changes as well.
Yes.
And so Fannie and Freddie see that and they're like, okay, well, let's raise our limit. Let's do our part to try to offset some of this and keep some affordability in the market.
I would agree. And even I would say, to add to that note, is I think THDA, even this past year, came out with a great addition to what they do, right? So beginning of last year, they were doing $6,000 flat for first-time home buyers. They had to come up with the rest. And I mean, obviously the interest rate for them changes all the time as well. But now they're doing the 6% for the down payment, which is huge. I mean, first-time home buyers are already having a hard enough time getting into that affordability range, but now you're able to help them on the cash side, so they're being able to keep a little bit more cash in their pocket to do other things if need be.
Yeah.
I thought that was a huge change to at least benefit them in that aspect too.
It is. Yeah. So I'm curious about this, because obviously I see things on a different side than where by the time it gets to you, I've already worked through a lot of what we're about to talk about. But are you getting THDA offers accepted? Are you getting sellers that will take THDA buyers?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I personally have not seen anyone not get an offer approved because of THDA. And I'm going to say that with a little bit of hesitancy, only because, for instance, like I had 2 clients I closed in December. And I don't believe that the real estate agents, my buyer's agent, had put that it was a THDA. I think they had just put that it was FHA.
I see.
So I think that may have been part of the reason why we got accepted. I don't know the legalities behind that. That's all you. But I can say I have had multiple clients over the past 3 or 4 months that go under contract on THDA. And I mean, they're going for houses that don't have the appeal that others do, though.
I got you. Yeah. Cause I mean, over the last several years, that's been an instant non-starter. If you put THDA on there, cause if you're in a multiple offer situation, you got 10, 12, 15. I had one that had 32 offers on it as a listing agent. You start looking at different ways how do you narrow it down? You can only sell it once.
Yeah.
And so obviously you look at the dollar amounts, but you also start looking at, how qualified is that buyer, and typically cash is king.
Absolutely.
So, if you've got somebody that's THDA, they're putting no money down, they have no skin in the game, and you've got somebody that's putting 20% down, that weighs on a seller. It's more of a quote sure thing.
Sure.
Whether it is or it isn't, it's perceived that way.
Sure. I mean, I can say if I were on the listing side and I saw a THDA and I had 32 offers, no way in the world would I take it. I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't. And I only say that because of the double underwrite. And as far as the skin in the game, but the double underwrite would be the most confusing, or the most
more government overlays on it.
Yeah. I mean, I actually had one this past year that we completely underwrote. Everything was good through FHA, went to THDA, and they calculated income differently. And they were like $1,000 over the limit. And then it just kind of blew the thing up. But it's like, you don't know because they do a different calculation.
Yeah.
So I get that from that aspect. I can say my personal opinion is that government loans aren't actually worse than conventional, though, which is typically the persona right now.
Right.
I mean, I think Brett and I had a client that was FHA, very, very well qualified, had plenty of money. He just had to go FHA due to some credit situations. And there's no reason that he would have lost out, but I know he would have if a conventional offer came in the picture.
Yeah. That's crazy.
But it's just that persona.
Yeah. So what do we do about that? What do we do to educate people? And the flip side of that, the reality is we know what the reality is. Yeah. So, if you're watching this and you're contemplating a first time purchase or a second time or a third time purchase, and you're looking at FHA versus conventional, which this is really strange to me, but even an FHA, which is 3.5% down versus a 5% conventional, almost always that 5% conventional is perceived as a stronger situation than a 3.5% down FHA, which I mean, they're practically interchangeable as far as like closing rates and all that kind of stuff, at least from my experience.
Yeah.
So, if you're watching this, if you're someone that's thinking about, oh, there's got to be stuff out there for a first time home buyer, all that kind of stuff, there is. But just understand that you're going to have a harder road just to get an offer accepted than if you wait, you have a plan for 6 months or whatever, and you squirrel away money.
Yeah, I would agree. I can say, like I tell pretty much any client I have that's asking me that question, right? Because the new year just started. They're like, should I dive in right now? Should I wait till the summertime? Should I, save up some more money for 2 or 3 months and then have a little bit more cash on hand to cover appraisal gaps or whatever the case may be? And my comment is always, if you're going to wait, just prepare for a higher price. That's just what I would say.
And bank money, bank it.
100%. Because if you're going to wait, you need to be saving up as much money as you can, for one, to cover appraisal gaps if you need it, or two, if for some reason that I'm just going to use THDA as an example, if you're set up with a THDA pre-approval and then you want to buy a house that's just $5,000 more than what you technically can afford with THDA, you need to be able to have that cash available to go with a regular FHA or regular conventional. And it just gives you more freedom. Is kind of the biggest thing. Yeah,
I agree with that. So let's shift gears a little bit. In that same realm, this has been a question that I've gotten a whole bunch, and it's a very interesting question to me, because I kind of am like, I really don't know how to answer that other than to answer a question with a question. Okay. Right. And so that is, are there any good deals left in the market? And my answer, so you said something that kind of sparked this thought. If you're going to wait, you do have to prepare for higher price. The other thing to know about that is the market does not appreciate in a perfectly linear fashion. Okay. So if we appreciated 31% year over year, that doesn't mean that it actually happened 2 point whatever percent each month.
Yeah.
Most of your growth comes from March to probably June, right? And then it's relatively flat as far as price increases, relatively.
In a normal market, yeah.
Yeah, well, even in this market. So you might appreciate 4% for the month of April, and 4% for the month of May, and 6% for the month of June, and only 0.75% for August and September. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you really plot it out. But that being said, if you are going to wait, you squirrel away the money. I forgot where I was going with that.
You were talking about
deals.
Yes.
Yeah. So are there any deals? Thank you. Trent saves the day.
Yeah.
This is why he's the producer. I love that, man. And be careful. He'll hug you on our way out.
Okay.
So
6 feet apart.
Hug talk. That's going to be another pod. Hug talk.
I had to pull that one in. So anyway, you'll see it tomorrow.
Okay.
But so here's my question. Are there any deals left in the market? My answer to that question is, if you had bought a house at this time last year, would you think that you got a deal?
Yep.
So if you buy a house this time this year, next year at this time, are you going to think you got a deal?
Yeah.
If we appreciate another 25 to 35%, the answer is yeah.
Yeah.
So if you are that guy that has the ability to buy, you probably ought to.
I would agree with that. Yeah. Because to me, there's obviously speculation on this from everybody. Everybody's a different opinion, and we'll probably get into this.
You picked up exactly where I was going. I know where you're going with this.
But the market as a whole, I can say that I don't personally see that crash coming right now. And with that being said, any purchase you make, it's going to continue to appreciate. It's going to continue to gain value. And anything that you make today, even if you think it's crazy, even if you're going to pay $15,000 of appraised value, and you're just like, that's absurd. Like, I bought a house in 1970 and it was $10,000 under, and sellers paid all my closing costs. Like,
right.
I get that thought process.
1970, nothing. How about 2011, bud?
Okay. Either way, but just in the past, right?
Yeah.
And then now it's like, some people have a hard time grasping having to go over appraised value. And it's like, I get it. I really do. I'm like, if someone tells you the house is only worth X, but you're paying X plus 15,000, I get it. But at the same time, that number that you're willing to pay, there's going to be 5 or 10 other people in 6 months from now. They're going to be willing to pay that plus more.
That's right.
So you just have to kind of know that going into it.
Now, I will kind of add on to that. I don't think that we have a pending crash. Like I just don't see us tanking. All of our growth right now has been fairly sound economically. We could probably we could definitely stand a raise in interest rates to slow some things down, right? Pull that growth down a little bit. But especially here, we're growing because people want to be here.
Yeah.
You know, and we just don't have, and we're, in addition to that, we have a lot of folks that are just staying in their houses. So whether they're not getting out because of COVID, whether they did some improvements during the early pandemic and they're just comfortable where they are, you know, they're sitting on equity and they're just cozy.
Yeah.
You know, and so they're okay with that. And so that's if you have more people coming in and less people selling, your prices they're going to go up, and they're going to go up quickly.
Yeah.
What do you think about interest rates? What prognosticate a little bit for me? What's 22 going to look like for interest rates?
So I can say in December, both our CFO and I maintained a I'm going to call it like a financial, not podcast, but like information, right? And they kind of project what they think interest rates are going to do for the following year. And everything that I am reading, and I'm going to tell you what I read, and I'll tell you my perception, right? So everything I read tells me that we'll go up somewhere in the ballpark of about 1% throughout this entire year.
And what's that based on? Like, where are we? And obviously you got to throw out a whole bunch of caveats if you quote exact rates. So don't do that. Yeah. But like a conventional 20-year mortgage, 20% down, 30-year mortgage. Yeah. We're at what?
Mid threes
ish. Yeah. Okay.
Roughly.
Sure.
So
you don't have to give all your disclaimers by saying that, right?
I know. Yeah. LTV couldn't. Yeah. No. I mean, generally speaking, we're kind of in the mid 3 range right now on a typical primary residence. Obviously, again, there's a lot of factors into that.
Sure.
But everything that I have been told from what my research and through our CFO is that we would go up about 1% throughout the entire year. So that's
mid 4s.
Progressively through to December.
Mm-hmm.
My perception is that we won't go over 4.5, and 4.5 is 1%. I don't think we're going to cross that threshold.
Yeah.
I think we're going to stay below that. And I say that really for one reason. And then I feel like our housing market is a huge factor in our economy in the U.S. And I don't think our political side wants it to get out of hand. And they want it to continue to stimulate, and they want it to continue to sell houses, buy houses. They want to keep that market going because that keeps our economy moving.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, by raising interest rates, you're going to start cutting that number down.
Well, so a rise in an interest rate of a whole percent changes the affordability calculator altogether, right? Yes. So what you could afford at 3.5% is here. What you can afford at 4.5% is here. And so do you think, and I have an answer for this as well, do you think that a raise of interest rate of a whole percent up to 4.5, do you think that will cause the market values to backslide?
No, not here.
Right.
Let me put it that way. Not here.
Other
places, maybe. From my clientele, there's too many people moving from California that have buttloads of cash, or just think, I paid $3,000 in rent there. I can get a mortgage for $2,500 here, and I'm getting more house.
Yeah.
There's so many people doing that. They're coming from California, Chicago. I mean, the more people like that and with that mindset that you have come here, the less to me that properties are going to devalue.
Here's what I think will happen. I don't see us losing value for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And I don't think we'll ever go back to, when I first started, there were houses in Laverne that you could get $50 a square foot. That's not going to happen.
Nice.
It's just, I kick myself. I'm like, why did I not figure out a way to get, $2 million and buy all of them?
I thought when I was playing for the Titans, I love looking at houses. I would look at houses while I was playing, and I'm like, man, I want to buy a house. I never ended up doing it, but now
while you were playing, no wonder you didn't make the team.
I know.
You were standing on the sideline looking at houses. Come on, man.
Yeah, during the preseason on the sideline. No, but seriously, I wanted to buy a house so bad.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have. I can literally, in my head, I can picture there was one house in Brentwood that I loved, and it was like $500,000, I think, at the time. And I guarantee you right now, just being in Brentwood, it would be 700,
700,000-800,000. Yeah.
Like, golly.
But what I tell people, I think will happen is that if we're appreciating at 31% year over year, right? If we go to appreciating closer to normal at say only 10% when normal is 3 to 4, right? It's going to feel like we go backwards. It's like when you're walking through the airport and you're walking on the moving sidewalk, and then you get to the end of the moving sidewalk and you're like that. That's what it's going to feel like. So it's going to feel like we go backwards, even though really we just kind of get closer back to normal. And I think that's what's going to happen. You think 4.5 is all it'll go?
Personally, yes.
I think
that's just a gut feeling, though. I mean, I can definitely be wrong in that aspect.
I think you're probably right. I think 5.5 is probably our ceiling at this point. You know, it's kind of like when the first time I bought a house, our interest rates were 7%. Right. And it was like, okay, well, whatever. But we didn't know that it could even go to 5% or 4% or 3% or into the 2s or into the 1s. There for a brief period of time, you could get a 15-year mortgage at 1.75, 1.75. Yeah, it was possible.
It was.
You could not even possible. It really wasn't that hard.
No, I mean, we love the VA Earls because you could refinance those and get them in the high 1s with great credit scores and things like that. And
that's practically free money.
Ultimately,
I mean, basically, I mean, you're underperforming appreciation, right? Or not appreciation, cost of living, right? So,
and you can turn around and take that money and put it in. That's what I would do. Put it in an investment account. You're going to make more interest on that, or more growth on that than you would having it sitting in your equity in your home.
100%. Yeah, no doubt. So, since we didn't even know that was possible, and then it happened, and then as stuff starts to tick up, our tolerance of a 7% interest rate, like, can you imagine? It would cripple the economy at this point.
Yeah.
So
people would just hear that number and lose their mind.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, that's, I mean, the sky's
absurd.
Yeah. It's absurd. Yeah. You know, vote them all out, all of them, every single one of them. Anyway, so yeah, I think we're on the same page there. So, tell us about kicking for the Titans. What was it like? What was it like the first time you ran out onto the field?
Extremely nerve-wracking.
Really?
So, I would say I do a fairly good job of maintaining like mental composure. I'm not like a rah-rah. Like before the game, I wasn't listening to, Young Jeezy and just banging my head against the wall. Like I wasn't doing that. I was just
I don't know who Young Jeezy is, but okay.
A rapper, right? So,
I got you. Okay. Trent's like, oh yeah,
come on.
That's what he does before every show.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I wish y'all could have seen that off camera.
That was funny.
That was pretty good.
But yeah, so I was just really composed. I mean, I was just pretty straightforward, straight and narrow, right? I can say when I got to the Titans and even the first practice, I mean, it got to a point where I was just so nervous.
Did you throw up?
I did not.
Okay.
I did not throw up, thankfully. But like I could feel tingling in my fingers. My heart felt like it was going to beat out of my chest. Just because I'm like hard on myself. So I was like, you got to do good. You got to do good. You got to do good to stay on the team, things like that. So I was nervous. I can say after probably a week or two of practice, I really kept my composure better.
Settled in.
And
you were a place kicker, right?
Punter primarily. I punted and kicked off. And then I did kick field goals when I was with the Titans, but I'm definitely not a field goal kicker.
Oh, okay.
But then I can hold too. But I never actually held during the preseason just because Brett Kern, the punter, was the holder for our kicker at the time. So
gotcha.
Just kind of worked out that way. But to answer your question on another level, so my first game ever was in Green Bay playing the Packers.
I mean, that's a thing in and of itself, right?
That's like iconic.
As a fan, that would be amazing.
That's iconic. I mean, to have my first NFL game in that stadium was just amazing to me.
Yeah.
But I remember I went out for opening kickoff. And like I was excited, nervous, right? Nothing.
You kicked the opening kickoff?
I did. I did opening kickoff. And I was excited and nervous, but I just was. Kickoffs are, in my opinion, like fairly easy. As long as you can just time it up, you're going to be pretty good.
Did the wind blow the ball over?
They did not.
Oh.
It was a pretty easy day. I think it was 60 degrees outside. So no snow either.
Yeah.
But that went really well. But my first punt, I honestly think I blacked out. I don't remember anything. And,
Wow.
well, I don't remember being out there.
Have you watched it on video?
I actually have it on my phone because it was a great punt. We were on like our 40, I think it was our 40-yard line, and I directionally punted it right, and it basically hit the 5-yard line and went straight out of bounds. Like, it was
Oh.
perfect.
That coffin corner.
Exactly.
Nice.
I could honestly could not have done better.
But you don't remember it.
I don't remember being out
That's
there doing
incredible.
that.
Yes.
Complete blackout. But
That's so cool.
my brother sent me the video on TV after the game, and I was like, wow, that's really good.
I did that. Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, I mean, it was a great experience. I think it's something that obviously, if you ever get the opportunity to do, if anybody ever gets the opportunity to do, there's no reason you shouldn't. It was great, obviously, from a financial aspect. It was great from being able to play at that level. But honestly, the thing that nobody ever thinks about and that I didn't even realize until I'm in my career now is the mindset of the players.
Yeah.
Like, that is what's incredible.
I mean, it's the top of the top. So here's the thing. Even if you don't make the team, right, you're still better than, you're still in the top
8% of people
or more.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's you're in the top point, whatever, 3% of all football players that have ever played football.
Yeah.
And
it's even across the world, because we're now getting football players from Germany. And
yeah. So that only
Asia,
that only
stuff.
shrinks the percentage of how many people make it, if you think about it.
Yeah, it really does. That's what's amazing. But like, now I watch, I don't know if you ever heard of a podcast. It's I Am Athlete with Brandon Marshall. He was a receiver in the NFL for like 13 years, and a couple other NFL guys. And I love watching his podcast. It's mental health focused. But just listening to the guys talk in that setting, and even in the locker room, and just the level of professionalism and just so much expectation out of themselves. It's just incredible.
Well, and it's lifelong. I mean, you think about that, none of those people started, very few. I'm not going to say none, because I'm sure it's possible that there's somebody.
Yeah.
Most of them have been playing forever.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as they could walk, just about,
I would say so.
and then and they develop their bodies. Their body is their tools, and it's, I don't know. It's you're right. The mindset to do that for decades and just to hone yourself. I mean, there's some natural gifting as well, and there's genetics. There's no way that I would ever be an NFL player. I'm short and fat and bald, so it's just not.
You could have been a snapper.
No, probably not. But maybe an athletic trainer. That's about it. Yeah.
Yeah, those are very needed though. But yeah, I mean, when I was there, being able to be around those guys was something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, going into the professional environment, that's what's hard to me, being a mortgage lender sometimes, is that I'm so used to, I can go out on the field and I can show you why I'm so good, right? Like, I can physically prove that to you. In mortgage lending, a lot of times there's not a whole lot of opportunity to prove yourself when you're trying to build a book of business. And that was the hurdle that I had to overcome, because I was like, I constantly had conversations with my branch manager, Marty Davenport, and just like, look, like, how do I show that I'm good? Like, I'm new. I look like I'm 14 probably.
You got a little more fuzz than my 15-year-old.
Yeah.
But only a little.
Just, maybe an extra centimeter or something.
Yeah, exactly.
But that was the thing, right? I mean, there's a mortgage lender all over the place. There's real estate agents all over the place. So being able to prove that you're different, being able to prove that you're very, very good at what you do, and providing something else was kind of a hurdle.
Yeah.
But again, from being around those players, watching those podcasts, you just kind of learn like the drive it takes to kind of get to that point. So,
well, and it's the whole, for every yes, there's been 150 no's.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Go for No, I think, is in that a book, or
I would
Strive for No, or
sounds like a book.
something like that. Whatever. I haven't read it, but I know the title. But anyway, it sounded really impressive until I just divulged that I haven't actually read it. But
you could have just gone with it. I would have believed you.
I could have, but I'm too transparent, man. It's a flaw sometimes. But I mean, you've done a good job. You've done a good job of learning. You've done a good job of connecting. You've done a good job of there have been times where you've been very transparent. I don't know the answer to that, but I know where I can get the answer, right? That's the most important follow-up to that statement.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty cool. I never thought about that. I'm sure there's been times where you've been frustrated too, because you expect professionalism all around you. And
that is very true. You do not always get professionalism in the mortgage world or in real estate and as a whole. That was a learning curve.
Yeah.
But
yeah, we're not NFL players. That's for sure.
Well, it's just different, right? Different type of professionalism.
For sure. Well, man, I appreciate you. I appreciate all that you do. Appreciate the work that you've done with my team and the things that you've helped support.
Yeah.
And, just everything about you, man. You're a good guy to know. So
thank you.
If you need help with mortgage lending, especially now that we've got conforming loans a little higher,
we do.
If you're considering a refi, something like that, maybe you got a mortgage a couple years ago, you didn't play the rate game
right way,
exactly. Yeah, if that's something you need, or even some cash outs, some of those kinds of things to do, some improvements on your house is a good time to do that. You've got at least 30% equity if you bought last year, if not more. Or I'll tell you what else is out there. And if I'm in this business for no other reason, it's to help people build wealth. It's not a bad idea to consider some investment properties. And you're like, oh, but prices are so high. Yeah. But remember, if they go up another 25%, and you're making rent on that as well, and somebody else is paying your mortgage, it's a pretty good day.
And your interest rates are going to go up too. So
that's it.
That's the other big thing. You're going to pay more in interest on your payments.
Yep. So if that's something that you're interested in, give Austen a call, give me a call, and we can talk through some of that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much,
man. Appreciate you. Also, don't forget Bryan Nale. He's the guy that underwrites this podcast, and he's an awesome dude. So, producer Trent, you got anything to throw in?
Just wanted to say this was a good one, Austen. That was cool. Just all of it. Sharp and pump, or just the whole punt story really got me. That was awesome.
Yeah, I can't believe you
legit blacked out.
Yeah.
Dude, that's amazing.
That's freaking awesome.
I have it on video though, so we're good.
Yeah.
Proof that I did it.
I did that. That's awesome. So appreciate you being on, man. That was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank y'all both. It was great.
All right. You guys have a great rest of the week. I'm going to steal from Bill and Ted and say, go be excellent to each other.
Love it.